Hey Playas, how you doing? Welcome back to Playas Guide. This episode of Playas Guide, as previously discussed on last week's episode, I'll be covering what the retro gaming and video game collecting scene is going to look like in 2021. What's going to be hot, what's not, what's going to be good for picking up, and what you might want to hold off on. Stay tuned. So I'm going to start this off with Nintendo because Nintendo is the most popular brand to collect for. The NES has been hot for years. It's cooled off a bit lately. And by the way, if you want to support Playas Guide, I just want to put this out there at the beginning of the video. There's two ways right now you can do so. I'm going to put a link below to an NES collector's guide that I believe is highly accurate. I've been working on it for years. I made it years ago. Recently touched it up and made it available for $5 for you to pick up. There's a link for that below, and that $5 helps support the channel. It helps support other content such as the Playas Guide podcast and helping us on Twitch upgrade some of our transitions, scenes, things like that, as well as a Playas Guide website that is in the works. So, if you want to support the channel, this is a great way to do so. If you don't want to throw any money at the channel, there's another way you could support. Pac-Man Case, a fellow YouTuber, great guy, excellent channel, and has nominated Playas Guide for YouTuber of the Month on Gaming Off the Grid's channel. They host the YouTuber of the Month video every month. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over there and in the comments of the video linked below that I'm talking about, please show Playas Guide some support and give us a vote in their comment section of that video. It would really help this channel get a little bit more exposure to other retro gamers and collectors that may not have found the videos yet. So thanks for doing that. Really appreciate it. You want to know about the NES and other Nintendo stuff and everything else? Well, this is the video. Okay, so in 2020, I could not have predicted what happened with COVID. But my predictions were still pretty accurate for the most part. You could check out last week's video. I'll put a link at the end of this one for that, or maybe an annotation up here. So for the NES, it's been hot for a while, but recently over the past few years has started to cool down. That's what's going to keep happening. The CIB stuff is still quite popular. The sealed stuff is super hot right now. I'll get into that at the end. But, in terms of the loose cart, you might even see some of the more common stuff go down and cool off a little bit more in value. The popular games, they're going to hold their value for the next year. The rare or harder to find games or the underrated uncommons, which I did a video on that too. I'll put a link for you. If you don't know about these games, you're going to want to know about them because they are likely to go up over the next few years in value. That's what we're looking at for the NES. So there's not going to be too many changes for the NES unless we're looking at the sealed, graded, and just the CIB stuff. That will go up. But that could be said for a lot of other consoles, like the Super Nintendo as well. Super Nintendo also going to cool off a little bit. Finally, I think we're going to see the Super Nintendo market just kind of cool down a bit. The underrated and uncommon games will continue to go up. And they're not going to go. It's not going to be as sharp as it was of an increase in value as we've seen over the past few years. But they will continue to go up. The rares, they're going to hold their value. They're not dropping. They'll slowly go up too. So the Super Nintendo and the NES are almost going to be in a similar boat. What I do think will go up is, I was talking about the CIB and the sealed stuff for the Super Nintendo. That stuff is going to see its biggest increase that we've seen in a while. N64. Another one that's going to cool off. It already has started to cool off in 2020. Wasn't sure if we were going to see that before. 2021, not going to be too different. The rares, though, like if you're looking for Sculptor's Cut, I would pick something like that up now because it will go up in 2021. A lot of people are out there looking for complete N64 collections because it's quick and it's pretty easy to do so, except for some of the harder to find games. They're getting harder and harder to find because more and more people are going for these complete collections. There's only so much to go around. Those games are going to go up. Gamecube in 2021 is going to be hot. It was hot last year and the year before, and it's going to be hot again this year. Now, it might start to cool off in 2022. We could even see a little bit of that towards the end of 2021 for the common games or the less popular games, but the popular stuff will stay strong. It will continue to increase in value, and the rare games I think they're going to explode this year. The rare stuff on the GameCube, if you don't have it, buy it now, because this time next year, you're going to be paying a lot more. Wii is going to start to go up a bit. So we've seen, because of COVID, some of the games like Wii Sports Resort, stuff like that went up. Some of the more popular Mario titles have gone up. I don't think they're going to really shoot up too much, those ones. They might start to go up a bit, because I know Smash Brothers on the Wii was getting pretty cheap for a while. I think some of these other ones are going to, these popular titles are just going to keep going up. But the rare stuff is really going to go up too. Not as much as what I'm talking about with GameCube, but this 2021, at some point, maybe it'll be towards the end of the year, that's when we're going to start seeing the collectors looking at Wii U, maybe taking a little bit more seriously, looking at some of the more rare and uncommon stuff, and really assessing it a lot better. Now, I did do a video on rare Wii games and Wii collecting, so you can check that out too. I'd recommend that you do. But for that generation, because it is still early on collecting for it, there will be games that maybe were underestimated at that time and undervalued and underappreciated, and will become more and more appreciated because the Wii U has such a huge library. There's so much shovelware and garbage. But if you really kind of just shift through the shit, you're going to find some gems on the Wii. That's for sure. And this is another thing, too, that you're going to see more on YouTube. You're going to see more YouTubers talking about Wii, hidden gems, and games along those lines. Because the games are still very cheap on the Wii, it's still a good time to collect for them. But those hidden gems and those undervalued games and those rares are not going to be hidden much longer. I mean, I've already been calling some of that stuff out on my channel for a while now. You're going to see other YouTubers catching on and doing this stuff too. But we try to stay ahead of the curve here on Playas Guide. Wii U, this 2021 is going to be a great year to collect for Wii U. I'm going to be all over it. That's my plan for 2021. These games just keep dropping. I didn't think they were going to get much cheaper, but they got cheaper over the past couple months. And I think they're going to continue to get cheaper. Some of this stuff, like if you're looking for Assassin's Creed, that's an easy one to find, or Nintendo Land. And I think they're going to be really cheap, some of this Wii U stuff in 2021. So if you want to collect for something on a budget, Wii U is going to be your go-to. People are getting rid of that now. I imagine within the next 2 years, there'll be a new Nintendo console on the horizon, if not already out and released. Maybe we'll hear, whispers this year during, who knows if there's an E3 event, but maybe there'll be some, Nintendo Direct or Treehouse event that, discusses, sort of what the future of Nintendo is. I think the Switch is still going pretty strong. But in 2 years, I mean, it's going to be looking at the life cycle of Nintendo consoles. There's probably going to be something else coming out by that time. So now's the time where the Wii U, not popular. A lot of people playing the Switch have rebought some of these games like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, Super Mario 3D World, just stuff that was available on the Wii U, and now they're playing it on the Switch. So the Wii U stuff, they don't need. It's cheap. They're getting rid of it. And you know what? If you're going to get rid of your Wii U and your Mario games, you're probably going to get rid of everything. So you can pick up some of the maybe lesser known titles too in lots that people will be getting rid of. So the Wii U is going to be a great one to collect for. The GameCube rares, good time now to get a head start on picking those up if you're actively collecting for GameCube or want to. Don't wait another year or two, because you're going to be looking back at this video and kicking yourself. And the sealed stuff, the Nintendo sealed stuff. Now, for the sealed collecting, I understand there's people collecting sealed games for PlayStation, Sega. Nintendo's the big one, right? This is why I'm starting the video off with Nintendo, because you probably collect some Nintendo and want to know about Nintendo collecting. Sealed stuff is not going to slow down in 2021. There will be a slowdown coming in terms of the demand for this stuff, but it really has made its way to the forefront of video game communities and video game collecting, that it's not just considered like a retro thing anymore. People know about this. So, you know, the more exposure it gets, the more people are going to get into it, the more value these games are going to have in the eyes of other people who may be selling them. So it's a market that is going to keep getting hotter for a little while longer anyways, but it's establishing itself. You got to understand, it was always there. Well, it wasn't always there, but it's been there for a long time. People didn't know about it. Maybe you're watching this video and you just heard about it 4 or 5 years ago. It's been going on longer than that, but it's very popular now, and it's getting a lot of exposure. And as that happens, those prices are going to keep going up. But I think we'll see the Super Nintendo stuff really starting to jump up in terms of sealed and CIB this year. And the N64 is going to start going up too. But I think Super Nintendo will be the big one that sees the biggest increase, and Nintendo, Nintendo Entertainment System, always going to go up, at least for the next little while. So, you know, if there is something out there sealed or CIB that you don't have that you feel you need in your collection, consider picking it up if you can now, and then get it graded, get it slabbed, sit it on your shelf, you know, because it could be worth a bundle in 2 or 3 years. So let's move on to Sega. I think the Master System, I said last year it was really underrated and undervalued. I still think that, but I think this year it's going to be one that you're going to want to buy, because I think it's going to start going up. And the reason for that is because it's been undervalued and underappreciated for so long. And if you're looking at getting into some of this other stuff, let's face it, and that generation, the libraries for those games are massive. Massive. Most people don't have the space, the time, or the money to invest in that. Something like the Master System is a lot more affordable right now, a lot easier to attain because it's a much smaller library. I mean, they come in the nice cases. There's some really good games. Worthwhile to invest in the Master System in 2021, because I don't think it's going to, prices are going to skyrocket or jump, because that would have already happened with the nostalgia factor a couple years ago. But it will go up. Genesis will also go up a little bit for some of the stuff, like the shoot 'em ups, and some of the really popular games and rare games. But that's in the same boat as what I was talking about with the NES and the SNES. A lot of the lesser games and less popular games, and the common stuff is just gonna it's just going to be there now. That stuff will cool off. So let's try to go through this, I guess, in order. The Sega CD stuff, I don't know. I think that stuff might cool off a little bit. Some of the more uncommon stuff did get a little bit of momentum over the past few years, but because it's not really that mainstream or super popular, 32X, Sega CD, I don't think that stuff's going to go up much at all in value. Some of the rare games might a bit. So then we have the Saturn. The Saturn stuff, I think, will go up. But I don't think it'll go up huge. What I do think is going to jump in price quite a bit in 2021 is the Dreamcast. I think that stuff has been just creeping up there in price for a while. And I hear a lot of people online talking about how great the Dreamcast was. Now, I never really heard anybody saying bad things about it before. But, the word is out there and it's spreading so much that I really think if the Dreamcast is going to, see a spike or like a last kind of push in value, it's going to be in 2021. So it's around the same generation there as GameCube. So I think that generation of games is going to go up, which would bring us right to the Xbox. Xbox, those games are going up. They've been underrated, and there's so many hidden gems on it. They're going to be brought to the forefront by different communities online and content creators, that you're going to see what games are really good, what the hidden gems are, what games are undervalued, and people are going to start buying them. We already know what most of the rares are. Just like all of these consoles I'm talking about, you can probably find a video here on Playas Guide. I'm almost certain I've made one for all of these now, talking about what games are rare and what to look for when collecting. So the Xbox, for the past few years, has been pretty cheap to pick up a lot of really good games, a lot of harder to find games. You're not going to see as much of that in 2021. You're not going to see as many value bins with the Xbox games in them. You're going to start seeing them behind the counter of the game store, under the glass. They're going to go up in value. The Xbox 360, on the other hand, that is what's going to be in the value bins. It's going to be in more and more of the mom and pop stores. The privately owned game stores is where you're going to see a lot of that now that stores like EB Games and GameStop are not carrying them. They're not even taking them in. So that's where you're going to find them. And they might not take them either, because there are just so many games for that console. It's kind of hard to collect for. But, how many copies are they going to need of Assassin's Creed on the shelf? 10 years from now, the stores might be like really wanting that. I don't see it because of the way things are going digitally. You're going to get a digitally remastered version that if you have nostalgia for the game, you're probably going to go and play that and not buy the old 360 version. So I think a lot of that stuff is not going to hold its value as well because of this. And that, to be honest, I can say that for a lot of the disc-based stuff. People talk about bit rot in cartridges. I've never really experienced too much of that, but the disc rot is real. That is a real thing, so they don't hold up as well. And when we're getting into the 360 generation, we're also getting into a generation of gamers that digital was always there. It was always available. Your console was like a media center. Your Nintendo Entertainment System, your Super Nintendo, your Sega Genesis was not like a media center. It was a gaming console. So when we get into this generation with the 360, there are rare games, and those rare games are going up in 2021. But from a collector's standpoint, there's a lot of common stuff that isn't going to go up in value. And in 2021, if you want that stuff, it's going to be very cheap. The only thing for the 360 that's going to go up is the more rare and uncommon games. Everything else is going to be dirt cheap. And you might be able to score some of these games pretty cheap, the harder to find ones, because not a lot of people know about them so early on in collecting. I have a rarity guide video for the 360 as well. But like, I'll admit, over the next 2 or 3 years, maybe I'll revise that and come out with a revamped video that might be more accurate. Right now, I feel like that's the most accurate source, but because it's so early on, some things may be overestimated or underestimated in terms of rarity. But the stuff that we do know now as rares will start to establish themselves in the market. The underrated stuff, in the next 2 years or so, that's when that stuff will start surfacing and people will acknowledge some other games as being rare and uncommon, other than the stuff I talked about in my 360 collecting video. Okay, PlayStation. Wow, I did not think PlayStation stuff was going to go up in value as much as it did last year in 2021, which I guess it still is 2021, but it's the very end of it. It's past us. It's still going to go up. It's still going to go up in 2021. But I can't see it jumping like it did last year. Especially some of the games like the fighting games, the horror survival games. Keep an eye out for these games. If you can find them cheap, pick them up, because a lot of those genres are going up. The RPGs, and the reason for this is something that, well, I guess the Dreamcast did okay with, and the Saturn did okay with some of the fighters. Nintendo wasn't doing really much at all with fighting games, which they had done pretty good on the Super Nintendo. Same with RPGs. Nintendo wasn't doing too much on the N64 and Gamecube with RPGs. So, and the horror survival thing, almost non-existent. It does exist. I know of a few games, and you can, sure, mention them in the comments below if you'd like. But I know about them. But if you want those fighting games, the RPGs, the horror survival games, a lot of these different Japanese sort of games, and those are on PlayStation. And they're on PlayStation 2. And PlayStation 2 is the one, I think, alongside with the GameCube, that is just going to... PlayStation 2 might see its biggest increase in value for its games out of all the consoles next year. I'm going to call it. I know it's a bold statement, but that's what I think is going to happen. The console's over 20 years old now. A lot of people talking about hidden gems. A lot of people talking about underrated games on those consoles. If you look around online, you're going to see those discussions happening. Nostalgia factor is going to kick in. And PS2, I would say for me personally, was my favorite console of that time. Even though I didn't have one, I was playing the Nintendo Entertainment System, which is why I'm a retro gamer. But I'm discovering a lot of great stuff on the PS2 right now that was overlooked or I never knew about. And I think there's a lot of other people doing that, but there's also going to be a lot of other people, like me, mixing in with the guys who have nostalgia for it. And it's, it's going to create fire and smoke, and it's going to get really hot in 2021. The PS3, well, the PS3 is similar to the Xbox 360 to some degree. There is a certain amount of common games that are not going to have much value, but Sony's going to do better than Xbox here for collectability. The PS3 stuff, I mean, even just looking at the case and everything, I think looks nicer than when you look at the 360 and the Wii stuff on a shelf. It seems like the best quality for that time of product in terms of collectability. And PS3 had a lot of major franchises established on that console that we are going to see next year on the PS5. Follow, like, they're going to continue on with those franchises. So PS3 is going to be really cheap to collect for in 2021, but just be prepared to see some of those games starting to go up. Like, don't be caught off guard if one day you walk into a game store and, you know, there's a game that was maybe $20 or $25 before, and you see it for 40 or 35. Not a huge jump, but some of the games are going to start climbing up there. We'll see which games. We'll find out, I guess, what games do start going up. PS4. And didn't talk about this one, but now it's a last gen console. I guess I should talk about the Xbox One too. So I don't think we're going to see too much happen here until the end of the year, until maybe October. Then we're going to see some of the stuff starting to really drop in value. The more common games, the lesser known games. That might be a good time to collect some of that stuff, because sometimes the lesser known stuff is valuable, whether it's good or not, or popular. So I'm going to kind of generalize the Xbox One and PS4 here, because that's what's going to happen. The PS4, I think, will be a little bit more popular, but maybe that's me being biased, because I have... The PS4 is one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I think there's a lot of other people that feel that way too. And it won't depreciate super fast, but we will see it depreciate. I'm guessing like Christmas season, the beginning shopping season for the holidays next year, sometime in October. And that's because Sony's going to be pushing the PS5 really hard at that time. There's not going to be much, if anything, coming out on the PS4. And same with the Xbox One. And, you know, it just won't have the momentum to keep those consoles going. Those newer consoles will be available everywhere in stores, so they can easily be picked up for next year's holiday season. And a lot of people who are serious gamers will already have those consoles looking for new games. So yeah. The one thing that is interesting, I do want to touch upon this, and maybe I'll do an entire video on it. For the PS4 and the Xbox One. Okay, so the Xbox One, not really. This doesn't really count for the Xbox One. But for the PS4 and the Switch, we're seeing a lot of like these limited print companies picking up different indie games or republishing some older games on these newer consoles. And they're really geared towards collectors. So you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, I don't know how well those markets are going to hold up in 2021. I know they're going to do it for the PS5 for sure and continue with the Switch because it seems to be a moneymaker for them. What's going to happen here with these companies and because of them? Are we going to count these games towards a complete collection? Some people will, some people won't. You know, start thinking about that now. So what games are going to actually be rare to collect for? A game that was meant to be artificially rare because a company decided to make less than 100 copies and publish it. It just doesn't seem right to me. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense, you know, to do that. And in that aspect, we should be looking at like NES homebrews. You have to buy all of those in order to have a complete collection. So where is the line drawn? And also, let's factor in collector's editions. I mean, collector's editions and limited editions and, you know, complete editions of games. They've been around for a while. That's nothing new. But in the last generation market, and these games are still coming out, there's just so much of it, especially for the PS4. It makes things hard to keep track of and establish what is truly rare or what was made just to be collectible and you know, from somebody's perspective, rare. I don't know. Anyways, that covers it for the major consoles. I do want to touch on a few things that I did before. So the thing going on with like the 1-Up mini arcades and a lot of these different handhelds, the Nintendo Game & Watch, if you watched last week's video, I was shocked that I predicted that. Well, I didn't predict that, but I predicted it being a thing that was going to have some momentum. And I think it still will. I think, you know, not just the Game & Watch and not just like little mini arcades and collectibles. I think a lot of the different things that people can display in their game room. Here's an example. Like your Rob here, or how about this Nintendo clock? What is that worth now? I think it's probably worth a lot more than whatever it was, $30 or $40. Stuff like that is probably going to go up because people are really investing in their spaces more, especially with what happened with COVID in 2020, that they want to make, you know, their game rooms interesting. It's not just collecting and putting some games on a shelf. You know, people are gonna paint their walls and put up posters and do whatever else. Okay, so posters have always kind of been a thing. But like the custom art, stuff like that, I'm seeing more and more of that. You know, Perler Beads, they've been doing that for a long time. But stuff for people's game rooms that is retro and authentic, like licensed, that stuff is really going to go up in value, especially for the older things like NES and Super Nintendo. I know it's not cheap anymore, and I know it's going up already, but yeah, that stuff's going to skyrocket in 2021. That's what I think. And then the stuff that's a couple generations ago, like your Xbox stuff, your PS2, your PlayStation. I think the PlayStation stuff, I guess it's vintage now. I never really thought of it like that, but that stuff is going to go up a lot in value. So if you want any of that stuff, you've had your eye on some, you know, classic marquees or something for arcade cabs, or some different advertisement paraphernalia from Nintendo, get it. Just pull the trigger, because I think that stuff's going to get really hard to come by and really expensive because of that in the new year. All right, Playas, so that covers it for 2021. If there's anything else you want to talk about, leave it in the comments below, or join the Playas Guide Discord. I'll put a link in the description. Free to join the Discord. Lots of great people in our community there who are talking about retro gaming and video game collecting and a lot of other things that just pertain to the gaming scene. So it's a great place to hang out. Another great place to hang out is with us on Twitch. Different retro streamers every night of the week. You can catch me on Saturday nights. And you can follow Playas Guide on Twitter and Instagram. I hope you found this video informative. I put it out there to try to give the people who are subscribed to this channel and watch the videos here on Playas Guide as much of a heads up and as much information as I have kind of acquired through working at a video game store, being on various gaming forums, and collecting over 2 decades now. I've seen a lot of these trends, and this is what it looks like people are talking about, people are wanting, and this is the direction things are gonna head in 2021. Playas Guide wants to be your source for retro gaming and collecting, so please subscribe to the channel. Later, Playas.